when we step offline, when we step off social media, when we step off, all of the places that we go to consume ideas and information and images and all of those things that build an impression on us, and step out into the analog world and start looking for inspiration in nature, in the library, in the people walking past, in the conversations that we overhear, all of those things, and realize that is a vault of inspiration, of ideas, of knowledge. And it doesn't just all have to exist online. Hey team, welcome back to the Blanketfort. So we are nearing the end of peak summer or peak winter and about to go into that beautiful transition phase where everything is kind of got this fresh energy. It's got some space for reflection. We're kind of living in both seasons at the same time. And I really love this period, especially summer to autumn, which is what I am about to go through right now, being in the Northern Hemisphere. And I love that kind of new start of school vibes, that fresh kind of energy that comes with having had a rest over summer and having taken a break, and that kind of ready to focus again on something new with the space for all the new ideas that came in. And as you probably know, if you're a regular podcast listener or watcher, that I took August off, and it was such a gift to myself to just take this time to not have to create something every week, because creating something on a weekly basis is such a joy, but also it's really easy to get stuck in a trap of repeating yourself or going down the same thread of thought, or not really feeling like there's that much fresh inspiration. And at points, I kind of really struggled to feel like I had anything unique or interesting to say, or any area that I wanted to discover or talk about or explore with you all. So I'm really happy I took that break. And what I actually tried to focus on this summer was having a little bit of an analog summer. And I read this idea, I think it was on Substack, and I'll try and find the Substack article, but this man was talking about why teenage children summer, like that period of our life when we were children, teenagers, even kind of young adults going perhaps to university or college, why those summers were so magical. And I think obviously there is a nostalgia to it, but one of the things he was talking about was that time where perhaps for a lot of people who are adulting now, that time was kind of free of time in a way, free of these things that we had to do and be at a certain time, free of too many things keeping us online all the time, keeping us connected, reminding us that there were other people out there and things to do, and we could kind of have these extended moments where we just chilled. And he was talking about essentially the idea that in fact, our digital lives kind of keep us on all of the time. So we never get that break. We never get that pause. And I was really inspired and thought, do you know what? I have been craving the need to get more analog, to play around with different mediums. So I am going to allow myself to have a month which is all about exploring the analog and trying to live as much in that world, away from having a screen, away from having a laptop, away from being too much on my phone. And I thought today I would share my experience from having done that this summer with a few ideas of why I think there's some real goodness in analog and how we can tap into that, and maybe some playful ideas that you can try this weekend. So that is what we are going to do. We are going to talk about a summer where journaling and reading and kind of creating and sketching and drafting and taking photos and making food were central to what I was doing. I guess a kind of wonder of my summer. And I want to dive into the kind of 3 key takeaways I got from it, because I think it's easy to be like, oh, obviously we should just step into the analog world. We have far too much time in digital, and that's it. And there are some real benefits to that, 100%, but I don't think it's that simple. So I want to talk about my 3 key takeaways from the summer and what I think I would repeat next year or in another season. So number 1 is to be a beginner at something. And I think what really worked when I stepped into this idea of an analog summer was that I gave myself some new mediums to try. I decided that I wanted to explore more photography and to experiment with collaging. And it was great because yes, the photography technically had a screen to it, but not really, because it was kind of looking at the world and seeing what I saw through the world and trying to capture that. And the collage was a whole hands-on, very tactile medium that, quite frankly, I love, but I'm just not very good at yet, which is an interesting one. But I think giving yourself permission to be a beginner and kind of take that on board as something to explore and experiment with makes such a big difference, because we can say, oh, I want to do something analog, but often we lack a focus, right? And it's easy to drift off, of course. Whereas when we have something new that we know we're not supposed to be good at, but we're excited to explore and try, then I think we can be quite playful. And then the analog element becomes so much fun, because we just allow ourselves to explore and step into that kind of curious, playful space that we had when we were children. So I think for me, having that mixture or that connection of the analog with the beginnerhood really made the experience feel novel and took me away from craving any sort of screens or feeling like I needed to dive into work or be productive on anything, because it was like, oh, I was actually learning and growing in another area. I kind of had this new energy that was coming from exploring an entirely different and new topic to me and seeing what I could do with it, learning new things and trying them out and seeing how they worked, and seeing my progress just over a few weeks was really, really fun. And I definitely think this kind of new projects in a new medium or art form or with a new lens is something that I want to keep trying, because it's definitely fueling my playful creative fire. And I think if you allow yourself to be a beginner, if you can step into that, it opens up so many possibilities, because all of a sudden you realize you can learn anything, really. And that is just pure possibility. And I can't think of any better feeling to have when we enter a new season than what is possible in this season. So the number two is that, surprise, surprise, time away from screens was very healing, very restorative, very inspiration filled, but it wasn't without its complexities, because I have missed some stuff that have meant coming back has been quite stressful in some ways, because I've had to get on things quickly. And I also felt an urge in some projects that actually I wanted to enhance it. I wanted to edit. I wanted to play around with editing photos and videos that I'd taken. But it felt a bit like, oh, should I be spending this much time on a screen doing this thing? And I think my realization is stepping into analog, it's not as simple as saying, hey, no digital. That doesn't necessarily work. It can feel quite rigid. And if we're trying to amplify play, if we're trying to amplify curiosity and wonder, then having that freedom to explore and flex and experiment, and also, if we need to, just check in on work stuff that is happening if we need to, right? It's that the focus is analog. The focus is spending our free time, our leisure time, our as much as we can connection time away from screens and into the real world, into the physical, into the analog, but without demonizing the screen, I think. And I took a very simple approach to it at the start. And as I worked through the month, I got more and more nuanced and realized actually one of the fun projects I wanted to try was creating my own font set. And that was all on my iPad. So I spent time on my iPad, which is a screen and is not analog, but after having spent a lot of time with a sketchbook, playing around with lettering, playing around with styling. And I think understanding that the two in combination and just finding that right balance in any moment makes the whole idea feel a lot more accessible for the everyday for me. So I guess that second takeaway really is, I don't think it's as simple as saying no screens, but I think it is worth trying no screens for a little bit to see where the pain points come and where you're being pulled towards the screen, because actually it's much easier to say like, oh, okay, I'm being pulled towards social media, but I don't really, that's not enhancing my project, that's not taking anything forward, that's not helping me with what I want to do here. But actually spending 1 hour on my laptop editing this thing or trying out that or researching this thing or watching videos by this person is actually what I need and what is going to help me further this hobby, this idea, this project, this thing that I am doing in the analog world, in the real world. And I think is probably true of everything, right? That balance is helpful for us in most places. But I definitely found that as a key takeaway. And I think when I try and have a more analog period again, which to be quite frank, I'm going to try and stay in for a little while longer, I'm going to expect some screen time as part of that, but try and balance it with the core driver being this analog creativity. And so then my third takeaway was that actually some of the fun came from starting to create the things I wanted to consume. And I had so much fun reading some books. In fact, I'm going to go and grab the couple of books that I was reading so I can suggest them to you, like, so you can see them. 1 second. I'll be back. Books. So, sorry about that detour. I not a takeaway, but well, it's a mini takeaway. It's a mini hint. Where were we? What were we talking about? Okay, tip 3, create the things you want to consume. So I think one really helpful thing for that whole analog experience for me this summer was actually really getting into reading and focusing on that. It's something personally I love, and I know it's not something that everybody loves, but it is a great analog entertainment. And I was reading Mary Oliver's Upstream, which is a selection of essays, which I thoroughly recommend. And I was also reading this beautiful drop into, like, welcome to the Home Dong Bookshop. I've butchered that name. I'm so sorry. By Huang Bo Rum. And this book is just like this, you drop into a beautiful little world and you get to explore it and experience it with the characters. And I found myself afterwards being like, I really enjoyed that book and I kind of want to drop into that world a bit more, or I want to drop into a similar world, or somehow a combination world between the Mary Oliver kind of quite wilderness style thing and the Korean bookshop life with a coffee shop inside. I mean, dreams. And what it prompted me to do actually was be like, okay, what story do I want to read? Let me start writing it. And I haven't written anything profound or massive, but I've started to pull in these mini ideas and to write little bits and pieces as mini scenes or mini kind of pictures come to me. And I don't think they're going to turn into anything, but that's not the point. The point is to play around. And I think what analog offers us is this moment to see what really inspires us and have a go at making it for ourselves, or see where the gap is. What thing do we really want, and how could we go about creating that a little bit for ourselves? And that takeaway has been huge for me, because it's realized actually there's a whole area of creative inspiration that I don't explore that often, which is I think I explore what is it that I need to hear? What is it that I need to be reminded of? In fact, this podcast is basically a love letter to myself to be like, Lucy, please remember this thing because it's important and it's helpful. And it is, I think such an important ritual for me to do that. But at the same time, often when I'm maybe writing or creating, I come up with an idea, but I'm not 100% sure that's something that I want to pick up and read all of the time. Or maybe it is, but it's not driven by this, like, oh, I just want to find a book that is this, or I just want to watch a video that is this. And I realized that beautiful creative fuel of like, fill the gap that you see, fill the gap that you want for the thing that you want, is great. So I have really enjoyed that takeaway from analog. And I think when you step into the analog space, because you're not so overwhelmed with everything that's going on around you, kind of be more focused. And within that, see the gap that you want to create and make space in which you can build and create your own things that you are passionate about, that you are excited about, that you would want to read or consume or be part of, or just create in whatever way. So that is my third takeaway. And I guess those are the main things that I think next year I will 100% try and repeat, or in the next season of analog, I will keep those as kind of guiding principles or things that I think about. But I also wanted to share a few quick tips on things that I found helpful, like the tools or the approach, because I think if you do want to dive into a more analog, playful state this next season, having some of these things can be really helpful. And then at the end, I'm going to share a few analog creative ideas for the weekend, just like an idea dump for you, so that if you're like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, analog, I can get on board with this, but like when, what, how, I'll give you a few things to kickstart that you can do right now. So I think the tools slash mindset that I found really helpful are the following things. Number one, get a playbook. And I think I've spoken about this before on the podcast, but the idea of having a journal or it can be a bullet journal, it could be a sketchbook, it could be a whatever paper that you have, like analog paper notebook, that you can play around with ideas, that you can capture new ideas, that you can try different art forms or creativity, writing, poetry, collage, photography, sculpture, whatever it is that you're doing. Maybe it's interior design, maybe you are figuring out your outfits, maybe you are cooking, and you can just put ideas and inspiration and also play around with the actual projects in that book. And then give yourself time to reflect on it. What was good about it? What did you enjoy about it? Where were the challenges? What would you do if you did it again? And I think having that experimentation book as kind of like a field note record is really useful, because not only does it give you one place to capture inspiration and play around, but it also gives you the sense of like, actually, none of this is too serious. It's all learning. It's all exploring. It's all curiosity. And I think having a book of play and possibility, that is the kind of space that we create to explore and experiment, is so helpful, because it just prompts us to do that. And it gives us permission at the end of the day to be like, this is a space in which I am creating and doing this thing. So the next thing I've kind of spoken about before, but like, why not pick a new hobby? Why not try and be a beginner in something? And I think having this mindset of I'm going to try something new in this moment. So it's not just the analog, but it is actually the kind of like, oh, okay, I'm trying this analog thing in this way. And maybe it's reading a different type of book, or maybe it's trying an entirely different form of art, or maybe it's exploring, I don't know, a area in history or philosophy or geography or nature or anything that kind of speaks out to you, and just being a beginner in it. And then I think as a tag on to that, I would say give yourself a project. Like, have it be time bound, have an outcome. If you really aren't sure where to start with this, actually you could have a conversation with AI, and I'm sure it would build you a project. If you say, hey, I want to do an analog project in this area or in this medium, in across a month, where I have like 1 hour or I don't know, 5 hours a week to devote to it, what could I do? How could I do that? I'm sure it will give you a whole approach that you can sit down and use. But if you don't want to use AI, and if you want to go entirely analog, I think just find a project that calls out to you, an area that you're interested in. And hey, if it is learning, this is the time to go to the library, right? This is the time to go and find people that know about that thing and talk to them and ask them questions, and just go and get an encyclopedia, right? And I think having that project gives us, again, that permission slip, that freedom to say, hey, no, I'm focusing on this thing, and it's okay to do it in a different way, because I'm going to be a beginner, I'm going to explore, and it can all work in that analog setting. So yeah, be a beginner, have a project, I think are really useful tools. Then the next thing is about capturing it in an analog way. So I think it can often be really tempting when we're doing these things to capture them, to share them on social media, to, take photos and videos and, put a caption up and say, hey, I've done this thing, or here's a photo slide of this thing that I've been doing. And yes, that's great, but it again puts us in that digital world. It puts us back into sometimes performative acts rather than exploratory, curious acts for ourselves. And I think one of the great things that was nice for me this summer is I didn't put any pressure on myself to share any of it in the moment. And yes, right now I'm sharing some of that experience back. But in the moment, I just lived it. I didn't worry about taking the photo, about capturing the video, about putting it up on social media and having a caption and all of those things. So it can feel like, what other ways are there to capture things if we're not capturing them digitally? And I think analog capture is just, when I started to think about this, I was like, oh, this is a gold mine for being in the present, for allowing ourselves to wonder, for stepping into curiosity. Because when we capture things in an analog way, for a memory, for record keeping, we then have this beautiful gift of just having spent time in the present to be able to notice them. And the few ways I love or have been doing is a sensory portrait, which is something I've talked about on the podcast before. But the idea that even if it's just talked out or written out, that in a moment you capture the summer, that moment that you're in, the project that you've done, or whatever it is, but through your senses. So taste, touch, smell, sight, and sound. And just explore what those things would be. Ask yourself, what would be the taste of this? What would be the touch sensation? What would be the sound? All of those things until you build up your sensory portrait. And it's a really strong way to get into the present moment and to really experience it as a bodily thing, not just a mind thing. And that is been so helpful for me to try and stay in this state of wonder and play, because I do think it happens best when we're present. So that is a great way to capture analog ideas. The other thing is maybe you draw a postcard of a moment that you had, or maybe you just write a couple of sentences, you journal it down and be like, this was great, this moment, these things, that sound, that thought, this project. Just having that place to reflect and capture them in an analog way, I think you give yourself a gift, and maybe some of it you can keep. The other thing you could do is maybe collage your day, capture the things that you did throughout the summer and just create a little scrapbook of them. And there you have these memories that when you come back to, you'll be like, oh, this thing. And to be honest, you'll probably come back to it more than you come back to that photo on your phone or even your own Instagram feed, right? So I think that is a great kind of pillar of getting into the analog, is practice capturing things in the analog as well, and perhaps even just sharing them in stories with your friends or your family rather than needing to share it online. Although please share it online and give us inspiration if you want to, but also do it in an analog form, or try in an analog form first. Oh, and the other thing you could do for analog, which I think is really nice, is an audio capture. Just record something on your phone and build a soundscape, for example, of that moment, because I think that is also a really beautiful memory trigger for us. Sorry, I forgot to say that, and I've just checked my notes and that was on there. So final thing on my tools/approach to analog is to look for inspiration in the world around you. And I think when we step offline, when we step off social media, when we step off, all of the places that we go to consume ideas and information and images and all of those things that build an impression on us, and step out into the analog world and start looking for inspiration in nature, in the library, in the people walking past, in the conversations that we overhear, all of those things, and realize that is a vault of inspiration, of ideas, of knowledge. And it doesn't just all have to exist online. And even though we have that incredible vault of knowledge online, that actually stepping out and looking for inspiration in the real world, and hey, going to pick up a book to get ideas on what color you should paint your house versus looking at a million different Pinterest things. And I say this from experience because right now we've moved house and I have been in an interior design joyful, playful phase, but also trying to step away from just copying everybody else's house on TikTok, because they're great and I love them and they look amazing. And yes, I want to color drench like a whole part of my house, but at the same time, I also want to do what feels right for me and my family in our home and be inspired perhaps beyond the million same images that I see. And I think giving yourself permission in an analog world to remind yourself, to remember that there is so much inspiration just out in the world right there, is so important. So they're kind of my principles/tools. And then I just want to leave you with a few ideas that you could use this weekend if you want to jump into a mini analog inspiration. If you want to maybe just put your phone down for half a day or for one day and see what happens if you aren't on screens, if you aren't on your phone, and you are exploring the world and life in an analog way. And here are a few quick ideas. I'm just going to read them out because it's going to be simpler. So make a sensory portrait of your Sunday morning. love the fact that Sunday morning is this like moment to hopefully relax a lot of the time, and that just giving yourself the ease and leisure to do that is great. Try a new hobby, craft, art, game, something new. Just try something new. Maybe you cook a new dish, maybe you read a different book, maybe you explore a different art form, maybe you decide this is the weekend you're going to learn to crochet. Do it. I cannot wait to hear how it goes. Go to the library, take out a book you wouldn't normally read, and read it or delve into it or flip through the pages or just do something that makes you feel good. Make a favorite food. Popcorn 100% counts for this. You don't have to be cooking big time. You can just put some popcorn in the microwave, and if that feels great, do it. If you want to add some different elements to your popcorn, like a mixed popcorn vibe, my personal favorite is like chocolate with a salty popcorn. So good. But whatever it is, it doesn't have to be popcorn. Make yourself a favorite food, and enjoy the process of cooking it and eating it, and maybe make a sensory portrait out of that as well. Oh, have a reading night. Put on a favorite playlist, and yeah, just sit and read your book. Get comfy on the sofa, get in a great position, just sit and chill, whatever, like get a nice drink by you, get some snacks, maybe it's the popcorn, and just have a reading evening, or have a board game night, or any sort of like games night. Maybe you want to learn a new card game. One of the greatest pleasures of my summer in the last couple of weeks has been like swapping card games with a friend, like swapping card game ideas. It was like, oh, I've never played this card game before. I'm going to go and learn it. And they did the same, and pure joy. Go out and star watch. If you can, if you've got the opportunity, if you can see stars, that is like a gateway into wonder right there. So just take a moment to go and look at the sky for 5 minutes and see what that's like. Collage your weekend. So capture little bits and pieces, pick up, like cut up receipts that you used. Go and, I don't know, find different bits from your weekend or things that have happened from your weekend and make a collage of your weekend or with the bits from your weekend or something fun like that. But just make a mini scrapbook of the things that happened this weekend with the bits and pieces that you have. Maybe you're drawing, maybe you're just cutting and sticking, whatever you want. Oh, treat yourself to a new... Okay, and then the final one is treat yourself to a new book or to a magazine or to a newspaper or a crossword or a Sudoku or whatever it is that you like to do in a kind of paper form, and go and sit somewhere and read or crossword or just be in a public space doing something analog. And don't take your phone if you cannot, or if you take your phone, put it on airplane mode and put it away somewhere. And just be. Maybe it's a coffee shop, maybe it's a park bench, maybe it is a museum, maybe it is in the library, and just do the thing there and just let the activity be just that activity. Because I think if we can let ourselves do that, what a gift. So that is my mini wrap up of analog. I am super excited to be back in the Blanketfort. It is September. We have got full on September vibes, back to school. I literally went through the shops the other day and they're selling all the new pencil cases and stuff. And I had to really restrain, like inner Lucy, who was like the 7-year-old in me, was like, buy a new pencil case and a rubber and a ruler and have it all match and it'll be amazing. So that vibe is very much here for September. So we will see how we go. I will be back in the Blanketfort in a couple of weeks' time. In the meantime, if you're looking for other analog ideas, I am actually hosting a Creative Mornings field trip on the 18th of September. So if you're watching this around that time, then you can go and sign up. I will leave a link in the show notes and in the description, so you can go and sign up for that. And that is all about making a wonder zine. So we are going to be fully analog. Well, I mean, it's on a digital platform, so there will be a screen, but really it is a supported analog activity where you can step into wonder, where you can explore what your feeling of wonder is, and we will capture all of those ideas in a mini one-page zine. So I hope you can join me for that. And yeah, I look forward to being back in the Blanketfort soon. We will be chatting all things. What is next week? I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's going to be good. So we are going to be chatting all things seasonal change, and I am looking forward to embracing this kind of new end of summer, autumnal vibes that are coming. Thank you so much for being here with me this week. It's been excited to get back into the Blanketfort and speak to you all. I look forward to being back soon, but in the meantime, happy growing.